were putting out l'énergie, 07, Safar. Your average Moroccan rap fan was just rejoicing this life that they pumped into the Moroccan rap scene. But they weren't really aware of what was happening behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot was happening behind the scenes, but there were a lot of tensions, some conflicts.
I mean, some of the biggest artists in the world were by their management, right?
Like Shayfeen had started out in an industry that was at least a little similar to what we have now. Maybe in 2024 we would have still had Shayfeen, you know.
Or we would have had like a amicable Shobi and Simone. Also a cautionary tale for a lot of working artists today. These people brought in sort of a new wave of Moroccan hip-hop.
So there has been some drama lately in the Moroccan rap scene. I don't know if you've heard recently. A lot of information came out about the iconic Moroccan rap duo Shayfeen and their infamous breakup. A lot of this information is alleged. We have just two retellings of what happened, and they're completely opposed. But it's been interesting.
Tea has been spilled.
A lot of shit has been spilled, and we're going to continue to spill it right now. So what do you think about this whole thing? I mean, Shayfeen was a cornerstone of the Moroccan rap industry, especially in the early 2010s. They started in 2009, right?
So Shobi started Shayfeen with a friend, and then back in 2009, Small joined. As a fan, it was so nice to see these two young men from extremely talented, from a small town, and with very limited resources, kind of do what they did at the time. They had quickly become sort of representatives of this new generation of Moroccan rap and hip hop, which had kind of stagnated in a way and died down in terms of like innovation and new flows and whatnot. And alongside other younger artists who are all established names now, they really did blow a breath of fresh air to the Moroccan rap scene. And it was so fun to watch. And their trajectory was also very inspiring. Like we said, they started out very small, but very ambitious. The energy output was widely celebrated in 2012. And I mean, it featured so many artists that many thought were out of Shayfeen's reach. I mean, some established artists, there was collaborations with then infamous DJ Van. There was some very interesting rap names thrown around here and there. And then obviously...
What a lot of people didn't know at the time is that both Small X and Shobi already had connections. They both started working on a bit of a solo career way before Shayfeen. So they had connections. They knew some rappers like Nishu, and they easily managed to do these collaborations very early on in their careers, because they were already pretty much household names, but just on the inside, not on the industry level. Not everybody knew about them, but a lot of rappers, a lot of beat makers were already aware of Small X and Shobi even before Shayfeen.
Yes, I feel like the time that they had come up during was very alive. There was a lot of producers, beat makers, rappers were just starting out, right? It was a new generation in a way. And they dominated in a way that I feel like the fact that they were together, they were a team, also allowed them to kind of take advantage of each other's strengths and cover the other person's shortcomings. And it was just a beautiful project to witness as an onlooker. But we were all kind of not surprised, but definitely holding our breath for the eventual sort of breakup and the way it happened.
I do feel like at the time when they were putting out l'énergie, 07, Safar, your average Moroccan rap fan was just rejoicing this life that they pumped into the Moroccan rap scene. But they weren't really aware of what was happening behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot was happening behind the scenes. There were a lot of tensions, some conflicts. And we first got our first glimpse into these issues and tensions was in 2018 when the Deuxième documentary came out. There are infamous scenes from that documentary where you can see Shobi, Smolix fighting. Even some other artists that were under the Shayfeen umbrella were also involved in the tensions and conflicts. It was pretty heartbreaking. Eventually, artists from Wadreri Squad also started leaving. They started pursuing their solo projects and their solo creative endeavors. And after 2018, we noticed Shayfeen slowly stopped making a lot of music together. They slowly stopped making appearances together. Eventually, by 2020, everybody knew that they were done. They had broken up, and there was a lot. There was a lot happening behind the scenes during those years. I guess from 2016 till 2020, there was a lot happening, and the live stream that Shobi did was a 4-hour-long expose into what was going on at the time. I don't want to dive too much into details, but essentially the way Shobi told it, he willingly took on a lot of responsibilities in the group, especially early on, a lot of managerial, administrative responsibilities, but he was also very involved with the production side of music. He wasn't just, as he said, he wasn't just writing and recording. He was writing, recording, producing, managing, doing a bunch of stuff on the side.
Which is too much for one person to handle in any circumstance.
I'm sure whether he was aware of it or not, I'm sure that he was spread too thin between all of these tasks and all of these responsibilities. And obviously, evidently, this is going to bleed into his dynamic with Smolix, their dynamic as a duo, as a group. And the way Shobi told it, that's exactly what happened. A lot of conflicts started rising about who to work with, how to do the process, what beat makers,
how to structure the group also, because they had started almost like in a very amateur way in terms of like organization and structure. There was just a little group of really passionate kids, super talented, super driven, who just wanted to create, and
which
then
is how you did it back then.
Exactly. But also they wanted to get bigger and bigger. They wanted to like pioneer a new form of artistry in this country, which is such a nice thing to strive for. But at the end of the day, they succeeded. They did get bigger. But like, if you're getting bigger, you have more responsibilities, not just as an artist, but as a producer, as a manager, and for someone who's taking up all these roles. Of course, these roles were going to get bigger. And then obviously dynamics started to shift. You mentioned the documentary that they did. I mean, for me personally, as a viewer, as someone who was a fan, that documentary showed me just how different the two guys are. Like, there was times where I was watching them have a normal conversation. This was not like a fight scene or whatever. And I was like, how are these people friends? Like,
they're very different people.
They think radically different.
It's very obvious right now, but back then I feel like we were all just, like I said, we
like,
were all just
opposites
so
attract.
happy about the music that they were making and the opportunities that they were creating, not just for themselves, for other artists as well, that we didn't really pay attention.
I feel like we were just like romanticizing the relationship a little bit. Like, yes, they're so like so different, but like, look at them. They're making all this. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, we drank the Kool-Aid. And then with the documentary, you kind of like start seeing how like they have different priorities in life, and they have a very different way at looking at the industry, at their art, how at the impact that their music would have. But obviously, as they were growing as a duo, they also started to enlarge their circle, and Wadreri Squad was born. And that was a group that basically compiled a bunch of artists that were all around the same age and kind of like had the same aim, right? Like, that's
It's basically a collective and artistic.
Exactly. But then as they got bigger, Shobi really wanted to grow it into something that was more structured, like an actual production company. And since he's been doing a lot of the managerial work and administrative work and production work, I feel like that was a very logical next step for him. The squad included some notable names today, such as Exep and Tane, and like all these people are pretty well known now, and it's because of that. But it's always that next step that where you get to the business of it and to the legalities of it and the splits and whatever. That's usually where things either survive or like implode. And unfortunately,
that's the make it or break it moment.
Unfortunately for Shayfeen,
exactly, that's where
it was the latter.
To a head. They couldn't agree on terms. The way Shobi told it, there were also other parties involved, not just the rappers, not just himself and Smolik. There were a lot of other parties involved, like a manager, like people from abroad. There was a lot happening, and they couldn't agree on the terms, and eventually that just led to their breakup around, I think, 22, right? Between 2018 and 22, that's when things started really ending between them. I think this is a very interesting case study of a sorts of how the lack of a structure and the lack of a strong management and a strong team working with and around a musical act, whether it be a solo act or a group act, can make or break their career. Because I feel like there are a lot of things that would have been different had they had stronger management, had they had better advisors, better mentors. And that's very emblematic of an industry that's still trying to find its footing when you're coming up as an emerging artist in such an industry. And I think that played a major role in how things turned out eventually.
It's a case study, and honestly, I feel like also a cautionary tale for a lot of working artists today. These people brought in sort of a new wave of Moroccan hip-hop, being one of the actors that truly propelled it into sort of regional and international dominance. If we're talking about the North Africa region or the Middle East region, Moroccan rap is, dare I say, like top 2 spot, right? And Shayfeen were part of that, and yet they had this quite unfortunate sort of non-amicable ending. And I feel like a lot of artists looked at it as almost a blueprint of what not to do in a sense. But also this coincided with the result of their work, which is kind of propelling the Moroccan rap industry forward. I feel like today's industry is a little bit more robust than when they had started, right? I feel like also for younger artists coming out today, there is the spirit of mentorship, and there isn't really a prism between like an older generation and a newer one. We've seen that, for instance, with Toto's
Planet Rap thing.
Exactly. That was amazing because you truly saw him bring up people that he had nothing to do with, in terms of like, he brought up rappers of a very different generation. He brought up rappers that he hasn't necessarily worked with before.
He brought up people that he didn't even know before.
Yeah, like a very diverse sort of...
diverse crowd.
Exactly, which was awesome, which I don't think Shayfeen had, like the older generation had already sort of like almost checked out musically. And then their peers were working on their own thing. And they tried to bring up people together, but they didn't have like the sort of direction that I feel like some of our generation, like this younger generation's rappers have, right?
Also, we can tell that today there has been a lot of interest from international players in the music industry. We've noticed Universal, Sony, Billboard is taking an interest in the Moroccan rap scene. So there are different players that are joining the market with expertise,
Yes.
which wasn't available to Shayfeen back then.
Yeah.
When these opportunities started presenting themselves to them, that was a bit too late at the time because tensions had already come to an all-time high and nothing could have resolved it at that time.
Yeah. I feel like if Shayfeen were to sort of almost start and operate in today's music industry climate, we would have had a very different ending to the story. None of the claims that they had against each other, which were addressed in their individual like solo projects before, like they were addressed musically. They didn't just go on.
It wasn't spoken about publicly.
Yes, it's just that now it's the first time that we have this kind of like fired up exactly. Yeah. But musically, there's been a back and forth here and there. But I definitely do think that yes, when they had reached their almost mainstream success and commercial and also like business success, it was already too late because there was a lot brewing under the surface.
It was a major rift between the founding members, so
and you could also
easy to solve.
Yeah, and you could also see it in their individual like solo projects after the breakup. I mean, they went very, very different ways, right?
Yeah,
Shobi took how many years? 3 years to come up with Howls, and Small wasn't as
Small went at it right away.
Exactly. It's like almost as if he was like held back or something.
Built a household name for himself after Shayfeen. I mean, right now he's one of the biggest, most established rappers in the scene, and deservedly so.
I mean, listen, both of them have done amazing things for the culture together. Individually, I feel like it's like almost like after a breakup, you know, like you need some time to figure things out. You need to find your footing, and you could go on and live a completely different career than the one you just shared with your musical partner, and that's okay. But I feel like the animosity that is still there is what's unfortunate. And again, it could have been mediated if these people had mentors, had support.
See, that's what I want to get into. I want to get into like the nitty gritty of what could have been different. Say Shayfeen is just starting out today. They have a better, like you said, the music industry today. We still need to do a lot of work, but it's completely different from where we were in 2010. So they would have more resources. They would have strong management. What would have changed, in your opinion?
I think, first of all, there would have been a very clear sort of GD, like a very specific job description for every single person. So, like, say if Shobi is both a writer, rapper, and producer, this would not even be up for question. Like, it would be established legally in a contract from the get-go.
It would be negotiated between the two, and a balanced distribution of tasks and responsibilities, and eventually a balanced split of earnings. That's what like a strong management can do for you from the beginning.
But also, like, even when you come into it as just like a couple of young friends just trying to do what they want to do or whatever, management will make you think about these things, right? Like, even if you're just two, 14-year-old kids who just want to rap, and you don't care about earnings or whatever, splits, management will force you to think about it.
Because eventually down the line,
exactly, because
they become important.
Because they have the professional foresight, right? And I feel like that's what they lacked. They only had their peers around them. They only had people just starting out around them, right? And so, of course, when other players, more experienced players will come into the picture, of course, some people are going to feel like they're being used or that they're being, like exploited or whatever. And I'm not saying those are invalid feelings. I'm just saying that it's a very normal situation considering the circumstances. And so that would have changed for sure. There wouldn't have been sort of conflict about
who does what,
who gets paid for what, right? But also, I also think that when you have management, strong management, proper experienced people around you as a duo, you have, contrary to popular belief, you will have more freedom to pursue
Solo projects,
little side quest endeavors.
Exactly,
like you could do so much more as long as you're not hurting the group, because it's structured, right? It's organized.
It done with huge acts. I mean, the Beatles, for
example. The Beatles,
like,
such a great example.
They did break up eventually, but before the breakup, a lot of people were doing very clear, set roles. You're the songwriter, you're the drummer, you're the singer, you're this, you're that. But eventually, because they were together for a pretty long time, a lot of individuals within the group started growing and developing other
interests, talents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They wanted to write songs.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, in the Beatles, they couldn't write as many songs as they wanted to, but they were more than free to go and write their own music and put out their own solo projects. And they had some really successful solo projects. And I'm not just talking about Paul and John. I'm talking Ringo and George. They had really successful solo projects.
Exactly. And what made the Beatles break up was when the members decided to go for two different managers. Like
exactly.
It always goes back to that. I feel like I don't care how, I don't think every single person that works together has to be of the same opinion and of the same sort of direction.
Creative differences are fine.
It's normal. We have creative differences. It's normal. But I feel like when you are operating in a less sort of grassroots kind of like unstructured, unorganized manner, you are more prone to let sort of like personal differences or personal feelings boil down to like actual professional disagreements.
The lines between personal, professional, they're blurred from the beginning, from the starting point. So eventually when you do grow to a point where these differences really start to become more pronounced and start to affect the output that you're putting out, eventually it's gonna lead to where it led.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunate. It was a very unfortunate ending, but not gonna lie, I as a fan again, I don't think I had closure, if that makes sense. Like, yes, they addressed it musically and stuff, whatever, but like it just felt wrong, especially that the breakup happened right after one of my favorite Moroccan projects like ever, which was Safar. Like I can't, like that album is like so near and dear to my heart, and I feel so strongly about it.
Keep in mind that the breakup happened because of a lot of things that
I know. Don't even like honestly, it's so sad for me because
that's
every
the
single
sad
time
part. We were unaware. Nobody knew.
Exactly, but no, like it was very unfortunate. But that's what I mean. It's like you could have very serious, radical disagreements and still make awesome art together.
A third party, a third neutral party could have very easily mediated a lot of the issues that were popping up. Like, if you have strong management, they can help you mediate when you have disagreements, because disagreements are going to come up.
They're normal. They're natural. You have disagreements with everyone you work with.
Especially when you're in a group, I think it's imperative to have a party that's going to mediate between everyone involved, all of the artists. Because that way we can actually handle the disagreements in a productive way, and we can actually move forward.
Yeah.
I feel like what was happening is that they were disagreeing, there were tensions, and they would just like solve them, not solve them, whatever, and just move on.
Yeah. I also
eventually it accumulates.
Something that came up a lot in these like recent lives and stuff. I honestly lost count. I don't know what's going on, but the age thing I think is super interesting, because like I think it was West who was like, oh, like we were young and we just had this like super like clan mentality, and loyalty was like super important to us and stuff. So I feel like that could have created an aversion to like outsider grown-ups in suits. I get that. But at the same time, they were just young. Like they were young when they started. They were really young. And even afterwards, like they were like, I feel like you could make sort of like corporate decisions and like wise decisions business wise when you're like, I don't know, 24, 25. And they had started way before that, and it's been brewing since then. So by the time a third party came into the picture, it was too late.
That brings up an interesting question. How can artists learn to also trust management and to trust other people, to delegate Because what was happening with Shayfeen, if like, allegedly, according to certain tellings, what was happening with Shayfeen is that when they brought in a manager, when there was actually someone who was supposed to fulfill this role, a lot of the time they would get sidestepped. A lot of the time they would get bypassed until things don't work out eventually. And then they're like, oh, can you please help us? We're not getting paid correctly, allegedly. So how can artists develop this trust of, like you said, big people in suits? Because it is scary, especially when you first started out as an independent and you were figuring out as you went along with an industry that was also figuring it out as it went along. So how do you get to that point? I get why it can be difficult. I get why.
Honestly, like, it's a tale as old as times. I mean, some of the biggest artists in the world were by their management, right? I mean, we have Michael Jackson and Sony. That was insane. Dr. Dre with like no stream royalties. Like,
Elton
excuse
John.
me. Elton John. Who else was it? Courtney Love. Yeah, no, that was insane. Like, there's Jay-Z and that Dame Dash guy are still fighting till this day. They're still fighting.
There is some merit in artists' reluctancy to work with corporate suits.
It's not that. It's either you're gonna become a corporate suit, like Jay did, and you're gonna, stand on business.
If you can't beat them, then join them.
Exactly. Or you invest, you lawyer up, your own personal lawyer, right? There's no such thing as a label lawyer. Like, you can do that for whatever.
Paul McCartney way.
It's fine. But get a really good lawyer. It's not that difficult to understand a contract.
Especially when you actually started making revenue and when you actually started becoming an actual established person. Because at that point, a lot of people would want to work with you just for the name recognition. A lot of people would want to just... I'm not going to say like leech, but a lot of people
leech. Say it.
You can actually, at that point, you are able to actually seek your own advisors.
There's a thing I really don't like. It's when people try to make contracts and the law and whatever and like business deals seem like they're too complex to understand. If you can read and you have internet connection, I'm sorry, you can understand your contract. You can get your splits right. You can double check after your lawyer. You can make sure your deal is good. If you are an artist making a revenue, being represented by a suit, like we said, I'm pretty sure you can afford a lawyer.
It's good to be involved. It's good to be aware of what's going on, the deals that you are involved with, the deals that are involved with your brand and your name. But I also feel like there has to be some level of trust established with the management team, because you have to delegate. You have to focus on your strength. You have to play to your strength, make your music, and trust that the business side of your project is being handled.
Yes, but at the same time, it's like dating. You could you could meet like a manager, like you could be approached by someone and you work together for like a while, but you can't trust them. You can't bring yourself to trust them. Break up, move on. There's a next one.
Obviously.
Like, try them out. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, just...
You're not obligated to stick with the person that you first start working with.
Yeah, you're not obligated to do anything.
And that's where business savvy actually comes in. You have to be aware of the contract that you're going to sign with that person from the beginning so that you're not actually trapped if you don't like how they do things. I feel like this is way more pronounced in group dynamics. It's so much more important in group dynamics because you have so many people, so many chefs in the kitchen cooking, that we need to have trust in our manager and knowing that he's going to be able to handle our disagreements, our deals, our percentage. Everything needs to be handled in a trustworthy environment.
Yeah. I feel like some of the really nice artist-manager relationships we're seeing now is like Pulpo and Yisa. That's a very... rays of trust and I really like that for him because
you can see the fruits of that trust,
the fruit of the labor, the fruit of the trust, the fruit of same goal.
We shouldn't also forget that, again, when Shayfeen was first starting out, they were still finding their footing in a industry that's still in its infancy stage. It's still pretty... It's in its growing phases, and there weren't a lot of resources. Like, we're talking about them now as if it's evident, as if it's normal, as if it's easy. But we have to keep in mind this was 2009, 2010 when they were first starting out. It wasn't common knowledge. It wasn't really that well known, especially in their own circle. Like you said, they weren't surrounded by people who were actually involved and informed about these kinds of things. So we also need to talk about how a growing music industry needs to start providing resources, legal advisors, financial advisors, development programs for artists, industry standard contracts for the love of God, which I think today we're starting to see the first glimpses of. We're starting to see.
Partially thanks to Shayfeen's early work in part, right? But also, like, honestly, in order for you to have an industry like, and all of these like structural and organizational and financial resources, you have to, like, the people in suits, again, need to see a potential for a really good ROI, right? Like, it needs to, because it's an investment, they need to see financial potential in these people.
Online.
Exactly. And so thanks to groups like Shayfeen, thanks to their contemporaries, businesses, production companies, music professionals from Morocco, but also from abroad, started seeing that these are viable investments, right? And so they started investing in Morocco's musical industry, not just in rap music, but more so. And now I feel like the industry is much more robust than it was a couple years ago. I'm not saying it's where we would like it to be, but it's definitely...
We still have a lot of work to do.
Yes, but it's definitely better than when Shayfeen had started. Absolutely. And I feel like a lot of younger artists today will not sort of operate in like a void kind of arena.
Have to deal with the same challenges and the same issues that Shayfeen obviously had to deal with in, I don't know, 2010, obviously.
And also, like, a lot of like younger, sort of more like fringe artists could have an aversion to some of the standards that could be put on them, or like the almost framing that some industry professionals would like for them to operate on, which we've seen, I mean, with rappers like Bokal, for instance. But at the same time, you have younger artists who are going on mainstream rap competition, shows on national TV. I mean, it shows you that the industry is established.
To Morocco.
That alone should be.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone is like a testament
Moroccan
to...
rappers went to Planet Rap. Planet Rap came to Morocco and had rappers as guests. Like, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this. Like, I still think about it every now and then. I try to wrap my mind around it.
But one of it, like, this is partially thanks to... I mean, Toto is a Shayfeen contemporary. They're of the same generation. They started around the same time with the same lack of resources. And look at them now. And this is what I mean. It's like yes, the industry is growing. But it's thanks to these almost unfortunate events that have happened. And I'm sure there are other artists that have been sort of whose potential was kind of like limited by this lack of structure and whatever. And I hope we'll get to see
like
more
we said,
of them.
If Shayfeen had started out in an industry that was at least a little similar to what we have now, maybe in 2024 we would have still had Shayfeen,
Or we would have had like a amicable Shobi and Smol, or maybe like a prospect of like a
reunion tour,
or like a reunion album, or just like one track, one song.
I mean, let's hold our hope out.
No, I'm gonna be 70. It's not gonna happen. No, it's not gonna happen. I'm sorry.
On that note,
I'm sorry. I'm not waiting. I'm not waiting that long. I'm not. No, I'm moving on to the next generation of Shayfeens, hopefully. But
we're seeing a lot of really talented people coming.
Yeah,
you mentioned Bokal. There's a lot of other.
Bokal.
There are a lot of other people like Bokal contemporary is a lot of younger artists that are coming up right now, and like we said, they're coming up in an industry that's a little more robust than what Shayfeen had to deal with. And hopefully we will see less and less of such ugly breakups.
Okay. Hopefully.
Maybe we'll see less of these unfortunate breakups.
Or at least just seasoned professional mediators that could give us a reunion tour possibilities.
Hopefully. We're hoping.
We're hoping.
Anyways, thank you for joining us today for this conversation. Thank you, Khurud, for being with us.
Thank you, Iman.
And don't forget to write to us on our comment section. Tell us what you would like us to discuss next time. And as always, tune in for the next episode of Spill the Tea.